When you go silent, something powerful happens in the mind of your ex. At first, they might not even notice. They might think you're just giving them space, that you'll reach out eventually. But as the days pass and they don't hear from you, an unsettling feeling starts creeping in. It's curiosity. Curiosity about why you're not reacting the way they expected. See, people get comfortable with patterns. If you've always been the one to check in, to send that "how are you" text, to show concern, then your silence is going to feel loud. It's going to disrupt the rhythm they were used to. And that disruption, that's where the power lies. Because when someone expects something and it doesn't happen, the brain starts filling in the blanks. Are they mad at me? Have they moved on? Are they seeing someone else? And once those thoughts start spinning, they don't stop. That's why silence isn't just the absence of words. It's a message in itself. It speaks louder than any paragraph you could write, any long text you could send, because when you choose silence, you're forcing them to deal with their own emotions instead of using your attention as a crutch. And that's uncomfortable. Think about it. How many times have you seen someone who just broke up with someone and they post nonstop on social media? It's not because they're happy, it's because they want a reaction. They want the person they lost to reach out, to show that they still care. But what happens when that reaction never comes? What happens when they check their phone expecting a message from you and there's nothing? That's when the shift begins. That's when your absence becomes the loudest presence in their mind. And here's the thing. Most people don't realize they miss someone until that person is truly gone. Not when they're texting every other day, not when they're begging for closure, but when they go completely silent. That's when the reality sinks in. They start remembering the little things, the way you laughed at their jokes, the comfort of your presence, the way you supported them. And because you're not there anymore, those memories become magnified. This is why so many exes come back when you least expect it. Not when you're trying to get their attention, not when you're chasing them, but when you fully removed yourself. Because now it's not you who's wondering what they're doing, it's them who's wondering about you. And that shift in energy, that's what makes the difference. So when you feel tempted to break the silence, to reach out just to see how they're doing, remember this: your silence is already saying everything they need to hear. Let them sit with it, let them feel it, because that's the only way they'll ever truly understand what they lost. People think that when a relationship ends, feelings disappear overnight. That just because someone walks away, they're done, they've moved on, they don't care anymore. But that's not how human emotions work. When you've spent time with someone, when you've shared memories, when you've built a connection, that bond doesn't just vanish the moment they say it's over. What actually happens is that they try to convince themselves they're fine. They distract themselves. They go out more, they talk to new people, they act like they're thriving. But underneath all of that, there's a storm brewing. And nothing fuels that storm more than silence. Because silence doesn't just make them wonder where you are, it forces them to sit with their own emotions. See, as long as you're reaching out, as long as you're checking in, you're giving them a way to avoid feeling the loss. They don't have to face what life is like without you, because in some way, you're still there. Even if it's just a small message, even if it's just watching their stories, that small piece of attention tells them, I haven't lost you completely, and that gives them comfort. That makes it easier for them to move on. But when you go silent, when you remove yourself completely, it creates a void, a space where your presence used to be. And suddenly they have to confront the fact that you're not there anymore, that the person they once had access to, the person who cared, who listened, who loved them, is gone. That's when the reality sets in. That's when they start feeling the weight of the breakup, not because you're reminding them of it, but because your absence is. And here's the part that most people don't expect. When someone realizes they might have truly lost you, that's when their mind starts playing tricks on them. They start questioning everything. Did I make a mistake? Was I too quick to walk away? Were things really that bad? Suddenly, all the reasons they left don't seem as important anymore. Because when you remove yourself completely, they don't just miss your presence. They start idealizing it. They start remembering the good times, the laughs, the inside jokes, the support. And since you're no longer around, there's nothing to remind them of why it ended in the first place. This is why silence is so powerful. It shifts the dynamic. It puts them in a position where they have to chase, where they have to figure out what's happening, where they have to deal with the consequences of their decision. And that's when things start to turn in your favor. Because now it's not You who's waiting, wondering, hoping, it's them. And that's when the game changes. People have this idea that if someone leaves you, they must be completely sure about their decision, that they've thought it through, weighed the pros and cons, and walked away with full confidence. But that's rarely the case. Most of the time, people leave because of emotions in the moment. Frustration, boredom, temporary dissatisfaction. They convince themselves that something else out there might be better, that they need space, that they'll be happier without you. And at first, they believe it. They feel free, relieved even. They think they made the right choice. But what happens when you don't react? What happens when instead of chasing, begging, or trying to prove your worth, you go silent? That's when they start second-guessing everything. Because here's the truth. People expect a reaction. They expect you to be upset. They expect you to reach out, to try to fix things, to remind them of what they walked away from. And when you don't do that, it messes with their head. It makes them wonder, why aren't they chasing me? Did I mean so little to them? Was I wrong about everything? Silence isn't just about withholding words. It's about shifting power. See, as long as you're the one reaching out, they get to stay in control. They get to decide when and how to respond. They get to sit comfortably, knowing you're still there, still waiting, still hoping. But the moment you pull back, the moment you stop giving them that reassurance, the script flips. Now, they're the ones checking their phone. They're the ones wondering where you went. They're the ones replaying the relationship in their head, trying to figure out if they made a mistake. And here's the thing, people don't like to feel like they've lost control. They don't like the idea that someone they thought would always be there has suddenly disappeared. It creates anxiety, it creates curiosity, and most importantly, it creates doubt. Doubt about their decision. Doubt about what they thought they wanted. Doubt about whether leaving was the right move after all. Because when you go silent, you're not just disappearing, you're forcing them to feel the emptiness, the absence of your presence, your energy, your love. And that absence, it's loud. It speaks volumes in ways that words never could. It makes them realize that maybe, just maybe, they didn't have as much power as they thought. And that's when they start to chase. People assume that when a relationship ends, emotions fade quickly, that moving on is a straightforward process, cutting ties, finding someone new, and carrying on like nothing ever happened. But the truth is, emotions don't just vanish overnight. And when you go silent, you allow those emotions to resurface in ways that your ex never expected. See, as long as you're engaging, as long as you're trying to talk, fix things, or explain yourself, you're actually helping them move on. You're giving them closure. You're making it easier for them to justify their decision because they get to see you struggle. They get to reassure themselves that they were right to leave. But when you remove yourself completely, when you refuse to engage, that's when the real emotional weight of the breakup starts to hit them. Suddenly, they don't have the comfort of knowing what you're thinking. They don't have the reassurance that you're still there, still missing them, still waiting for them to come back. And that uncertainty is powerful. It forces them to confront their own feelings instead of distracting themselves with yours. It makes them question whether leaving was the right choice. Because silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's the presence of space. Space for their own thoughts to settle in. Space for them to remember the good moments, the laughter, the connection. Space for them to realize that maybe, just maybe, they let go of something valuable. And here's the thing, people are creatures of habit. They get used to having you around. They get used to your energy, your love, your support. And when that's suddenly ripped away, they feel it in a way they never expected. They might try to act like they're fine, like they've moved on, like they don't care. But deep down, there's an emptiness that starts to grow. That's when the doubt creeps in. That's when they start reminiscing, replaying old conversations, wondering if they made a mistake. That's when they start checking your social media, asking mutual friends about you, hoping for some sign that you still care. Because now, they're the ones stuck in their feelings. Now they're the ones missing what they thought they could live without. When a relationship ends, people expect reactions. They expect pleading, chasing, arguments, anything that reassures them they were important, that they still hold power over your emotions. But when you go silent, you disrupt that expectation. You remove the reaction they were prepared for, and that alone can be more unsettling than any words you could ever say. See, silence isn't just the absence of speech, it's a message in itself. And to the person on the receiving end, it feels like rejection. It feels like being erased from a place where they once mattered. Because the truth is, when someone leaves, they don't actually expect to be forgotten. They expect to be missed. They expect to have some control over your emotions, even from a distance. But when you go silent, you send a message loud and clear. You no longer have access to me. That's what makes silence so powerful. It forces them to sit with their own decisions. It takes away the validation they were expecting and replaces it with uncertainty. And uncertainty breeds curiosity. Curiosity turns into doubt. Doubt turns into longing. Suddenly, they're questioning whether they made the right choice. Now, some people try to convince themselves that they've moved on immediately. They distract themselves. They fill their time with new people, new experiences, anything to avoid sitting alone with their thoughts. But distractions are temporary. The moment life slows down, the moment they're alone with their own mind, all those buried emotions rise back to the surface. And the silence only amplifies those emotions. Because here's what most people don't realize. When you go quiet, you take control of the story. Instead of allowing your ex to frame the breakup in a way that suits them, your absence forces them to create their own explanations. And more often than not, those explanations are far worse than reality. They wonder if you're truly over them, if you've met someone else, if you never really cared as much as they thought, and that's what starts to eat at them. That's what makes them chase. Because when you stop giving them answers, they'll start searching for them in ways they never expected. When you go silent, something powerful begins to happen. You shift the energy. You shift the dynamic of the relationship even after it has ended. Because, let's be real, after a breakup, most people expect drama. They expect emotional reactions, late night texts, long conversations filled with pain, confusion, and closure seeking. But when you remove yourself from that narrative, when you refuse to give them that expected emotional energy, you create a void. And that void, that's what makes them uncomfortable. That's what makes them start to chase. See, silence is not passive, it's strategic. It forces the other person to sit with their own choices. And at first, they may feel relief. They may even tell themselves, good, they're not bothering me, this makes it easier. But that feeling is temporary, because human nature is wired for connection, for validation. And when someone who once poured energy into them suddenly disappears, it triggers something deep inside. It makes them question themselves. It makes them wonder, wait, why aren't they reacting? Did I not matter as much as I thought? And that's the first seed of doubt. That doubt turns into curiosity. That curiosity turns into frustration. And before they know it, they're the ones checking up on you. They're the ones scrolling through old messages, revisiting memories, trying to figure out what changed. And here's where it gets even more interesting. When you stay silent, you force them to rewrite the story in their own mind. If you were to reach out, cry, beg, or argue, they would have an easy answer. Oh, they're still hung up on me. But when you remove yourself, when you act as if you've already moved on, they don't get that validation. Instead, they start to wonder, were they already checked out before I even left? Were they stronger than I thought? That's the power of silence. It makes them second guess everything. It makes them look at you differently. It makes them crave the attention they once took for granted. Because the truth is, people don't miss what's still available. They miss what's gone. They miss what they no longer have easy access to. And when they realize they no longer have access to you, that's when the chase begins. When you go silent, you force them to deal with the one thing they were trying to avoid, themselves. See, most people don't walk away from relationships because they've thought everything through. They don't leave because they've carefully considered every emotion, every consequence. No, they leave because in the moment, they believe they're making the right choice. Maybe they think the grass is greener somewhere else. Maybe they convince themselves they need space, freedom, excitement. But what they don't anticipate is the weight of their own solitude. Silence doesn't just create absence, it creates reflection. And when you're no longer there to provide the comfort, the validation, the constant reassurance, they're left alone with their thoughts. No distractions, no arguments, no back and forth, just them sitting in the reality they chose. And at first, they might feel relief. They might even tell themselves, this is exactly what I wanted. But that silence, that space, it gets louder over time. it starts to echo back to them the truth they weren't ready to face. Because when you were there, calling, texting, checking in, they didn't have to question anything. They could push forward, confident that no matter what, you'd always be an option. But when you remove yourself, when you take away your presence completely, that's when they start to feel the weight of what they lost. They start replaying memories, analyzing conversations, wondering if they made a mistake. They start to realize that your silence isn't just absence, it's a statement that says, I don't need you. I'm moving forward, with or without you. And let's be clear, people don't chase what's always available. They chase what they feel slipping away. They chase what challenges them, what makes them uncertain. Because certainty breeds comfort, but uncertainty, that breeds desire. That breeds obsession. When someone isn't sure if they still have a place in your life, it triggers something deep within them. It makes them crave what they once took for granted. That's why silence is so powerful. It forces them to confront their own decisions. It makes them question everything they thought they knew. It makes them see you in a different light. And once that happens, once that doubt sets in, the chase becomes inevitable. When you go silent, it's not about revenge or manipulation. It's about giving yourself the time and space to rediscover your own worth and to remove yourself from the emotional roller coaster that often accompanies relationships. When you're constantly engaging, whether it's texting, calling, or trying to get their attention, you're pouring energy into something that no longer serves you. This is why silence is so crucial. It's about taking your power back. It's about regaining your focus and remembering who you are outside of the dynamic of the relationship. You see, many times we cling to people, we give them our energy and attention, and in doing so, we forget that we are individuals with our own lives and needs. We lose ourselves in the process. And while we may believe we're doing it out of love or out of a desire to make things work, what we're really doing is draining ourselves. The relationship becomes one-sided, and we begin to neglect our own needs, our own growth. When you choose silence, you're choosing to let go of the need for external validation. You no longer rely on their approval or affection to feel good about yourself. Instead, you take the time to focus inward, to evaluate your own life, your own desires, and your own sense of purpose. And when you make that decision, you instantly become more attractive, not in a superficial way, but in a way that is rooted in your confidence, independence, and self-respect. When you stop chasing someone, when you stop begging for their attention, something shifts in the dynamic. The power starts to shift back to you. The energy you were putting out into the world begins to return to you. And as your silence stretches on, they start to feel the absence of you in their life. This is where the truth starts to unfold. They begin to realize that they may have underestimated your worth. They begin to feel the weight of the void you left behind. This is when the tables start to turn. When you were constantly available, it was easy for them to take you for granted. You were just always there. But now, with your silence, they are forced to confront the fact that you're no longer running after them. You're no longer clinging to the hope of a resolution. You've accepted that if it was meant to be, it will be. If it's not, then you're strong enough to move on and create a life for yourself that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval or presence. As they try to fill that gap, they might reach out to you. They might start to feel the pull of your absence and want to bring you back into their life. And this is when your silence does its real work. It exposes the truth of the relationship. They start to realize that they may have lost something valuable, something they didn't fully appreciate until it was gone. It's in that silence that the message is sent loud and clear. You don't need them to complete you, and you're strong enough to live without them. At this point, they will begin to chase you, not because you've asked them to, but because they're finally seeing the reality of what they've lost. They see that you're not begging for their love, you're not pleading for their attention, and that makes you even more irresistible. You've shown them that you are whole, that you are complete, and that you don't need them to feel fulfilled. The power of silence isn't just about making them chase you. It's about you rediscovering your own power, your own worth. It's about regaining control over your emotions and your life. And when you do that, when you make the choice to stop chasing and start living fully for yourself, you'll find that the relationship, whether it's the one you've been holding on to or the one you're destined for, will evolve into something stronger, more genuine, and more aligned with who you are. Your silence is the catalyst for change, not just in their pursuit of you, but in your pursuit of your own happiness and fulfillment. And once that transformation happens, you'll realize that the silence wasn't just a tool to make them chase. It was the tool that helped you chase your own destiny. Silence has a powerful way of shifting the balance of a relationship, especially when it's done not out of anger or malice, but from a place of self-respect and awareness. It speaks volumes, louder than any words ever could. When you choose silence, you choose to give yourself the dignity of space. You stop putting yourself in a position where you're constantly seeking validation from someone who has already shown you that they don't value you as much as you deserve. But this silence isn't just an absence, it's a presence in itself. A presence of power, strength, and clarity that has the potential to shift the dynamic in ways you never thought possible. We often think that love or affection needs to be continuously nurtured through constant communication. We think that if we show them how much we care, how much we miss them, how much we need them, we'll get that same energy back. But the truth is, this constant reaching out, this constant proving of love tends to devalue both parties involved. The more you try to show them how much they mean to you, the less they value you. The more you beg for their attention, the further away they seem to drift. They may start to take you for granted, not because they don't care, but because they never truly had to wonder what life would be like without you. And this is where silence becomes a game changer. When you stop chasing, when you stop making yourself constantly available, you start to create space between you and them. That space makes them confront their own feelings, their own actions, and their own understanding of the relationship. They begin to wonder why you're not texting them anymore, why you're not responding to their calls as quickly as you used to. They start to feel that absence, and the truth is, it hurts. It forces them to face the reality that they may have taken you for granted and that they might lose something valuable if they don't act. The power of silence isn't about playing games or trying to manipulate the other person. It's about stepping into your own power. When you go silent, you stop the cycle of seeking attention from someone who isn't giving it to you in the way you deserve. You stop the cycle of wondering whether they still care or if they still love you. You stop questioning your worth based on their responses and start reaffirming your worth based on your own actions and values. This shift in focus is what breaks the pattern of dependence. And when they sense this shift, it forces them to reassess what you bring to their life. One of the most powerful things about silence is that it forces the other person to experience the void you left behind. Often, we're so caught up in keeping the relationship alive, in trying to make it work, that we forget how essential it is to allow the other person to recognize the impact we have on their life. When we're always available, always there, they never have to consider what life would be like without us. It's only when you pull back, when you allow silence to take over, that they begin to feel the weight of that absence. And when that happens, the dynamic shifts. They may start to reach out, maybe not immediately, but eventually. They may start to feel the need to chase you, to win you back, because they realize that you're no longer chasing them. This sudden realization, this sudden awareness of what they might lose, can be incredibly powerful. And when they do reach out, it's not about you rushing to respond or throwing yourself back into the cycle of need. Instead, it's about holding your ground, about showing them that your life has moved on, that you are perfectly fine without them. You're not begging for their attention anymore. You're living your life, focusing on your own growth and happiness. In those moments when they try to re-enter your life, the power has shifted. You are no longer the one chasing them. They are now the one who has to prove their worth to you. They have to show you that they understand the value you bring to their life and that they won't take you for granted anymore. They have to demonstrate that they've learned, that they've changed, that they can offer you the respect and love you deserve. But the important thing here is that even when they do reach out, you have to stay rooted in your own self-worth. You have to remain grounded in the truth that you don't need them to feel complete, to feel loved, or to feel valued. You're not sitting around waiting for their validation anymore because you've already validated yourself. The silence was a reminder to both you and them that your worth was never contingent on their approval. So while silence can make them chase you, it also makes you chase your own dreams, your own happiness, and your own sense of fulfillment. It helps you realize that your life doesn't revolve around another person. And when you get to that place of understanding, when you truly believe that your happiness is not dependent on anyone else, you become unstoppable. You become a force in your own life. And that, my friends, is the real power of silence. It's not about playing a game to make someone chase you. It's about creating a life where you don't need anyone to validate you because you already know your worth. In the end, silence isn't just a tool to make them chase you, it's a tool to help you find yourself again, to rediscover your own strength, and to create a life that's not dependent on anyone else's approval. And when you do that, when you stand strong in your own power, you'll find that everything else falls into place. The truth is, silence is not a weakness, it's a powerful declaration that you know your worth. In relationships, we often find ourselves desperate to be seen, to be heard, to be loved. We find ourselves constantly reaching out, sending messages, hoping for attention, or trying to fix things that are broken. But what if I told you that the most effective way to shift the power dynamic in a relationship is to do the exact opposite? To let go of the constant chasing, the constant proving, and instead choose silence. When you stop reaching out and trying to maintain the connection, the silence speaks volumes, louder than words ever could. You see, the moment you stop chasing, you regain control. And that's the beauty of silence. It's a reflection of your inner strength. When you stop pleading for their attention, you start to regain the respect and dignity that may have been lost during the chaotic moments of trying to fix things. It's in the moments of quiet where your true power lies. The silence is not for them, it's for you. It allows you to take back your focus, your energy, your self-worth, and put them back into yourself. But here's the truth that's often hard to accept. Silence isn't about waiting for them to beg you back. It's not about revenge or trying to make someone feel guilty for their actions. It's not about creating an illusion of power. It's about reclaiming your life, your sense of peace, and your confidence. When you choose silence, you stop giving them the energy they've come to expect from you. The more you give, the less they appreciate it. When you stop giving them that emotional energy, it forces them to confront the reality of their actions. The power of silence lies in the fact that it challenges the other person to step up. When you're constantly available, when you're always the one making the effort, they may never feel the need to change or appreciate you fully. They might take you for granted because they know you will always be there. But when you go silent, it creates a void. And in that void, they begin to wonder, to question. They wonder why you're not reaching out, why you've stopped calling, texting, or pursuing them. They wonder why you seem so at peace, so unaffected by their absence. It's not that you've given up, but rather that you've come to realize that your life isn't dependent on their attention or approval. When you make that shift, you no longer need them to define your happiness. The silence allows you to rediscover who you are outside of the relationship, to find joy in your own company, and to rebuild your confidence. This shift is not about manipulating the other person or playing a game. It's about taking back your power and making sure you are not sacrificing your peace for someone who isn't giving you the respect you deserve. The absence you create through silence is felt deeply. In relationships, both parties can get lost in the noise of daily interactions. But when you stop responding, when you take a step back, you give them space to reflect, it's in that space that the truth begins to settle. They start to see how much they've taken you for granted. They begin to notice the void that was left behind when you decided to prioritize your own well-being. When the silence lingers, the distance it creates may be uncomfortable for both sides. They may feel confused, frustrated, even angry. But what they don't realize is that they are being forced to face the consequences of their actions. They are being given the opportunity to experience what it's like to be without you, to feel the weight of their own choices. It's not about punishing them. It's about giving them the opportunity to come to the realization that they need to show up differently if they want to be a part of your life again. And when they do reach out, it's not about you jumping back into the same cycle of need and dependency. It's about holding your ground, maintaining your dignity, and ensuring that they have truly learned from their mistakes. It's not enough for them to just come back into your life. They must prove they've changed, that they've recognized your worth, and that they can offer you the respect and love that you deserve. But let's be clear, you are not waiting around for them. You are not sitting by the phone hoping for a text or a call. You are living your life, focusing on your own growth, your own happiness, your own future. And if they choose to come back, they need to understand that they are entering a space where you are not desperate for their validation. You are already whole, already content, and already focused on becoming the best version of yourself. If they want to join you on that journey, they need to bring something of value to the table. The silence has made it clear that you don't need them to complete you, and they need to show up accordingly. At the end of the day, silence isn't just about making someone chase you or feel the loss of your presence. It's about empowering yourself, about choosing to put yourself first, and about learning to value your own peace. It's a reminder that your life is in your hands and that you are the one who holds the key to your happiness and fulfillment. When you stop chasing, you create the space for them to come to you, not because you need them, but because they have to prove that they are worthy of you. In the end, silence isn't a weapon, it's a tool for growth, a path to self-discovery, and a powerful way to reclaim your worth. When you stand in your silence, you are standing in your power, and that is the most powerful statement you can make.